Welcome to this evening's meeting. Tonight is May 26th, 2020. This is the Hanson Board of Selectmen meeting. We are meeting virtually in accordance with Governor Baker's orders during the COVID-19. We've done a preliminary roll call of the folks that are present on the meeting, and during the meeting, we will do roll call votes. And this meeting will be available on Whitman Hanson Cable Access after the fact, and during the fact, people can listen, but it is not open for public participation just because we've got some logistical complications with that. So that said, I hope you will all join me on the heels of Memorial Day in pledging allegiance to the flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. And with that, Mr. Bloss, I will turn it over to you for the public announcements.
Announcements. Volunteers are needed on the following committees: Facebook Upkeep Committee, 200th Anniversary, Conservation Commission Regular and 2 Associate Members, Cultural Council, Disabilities, Economic Development, Finance, Highway Building Committee, Historical Commission, Memorial Day Patriotic Observance, Memorial Field Trustees, North River Commission, and Zoning Board Alternate. Applications for appointment and info on the committees are available on the town website, www.hanson-ma.gov. Upcoming meetings, June 2nd and June 9th, both Board of Selectmen's meetings. Thank you.
Wonderfully done. Thank you, Mr. Bloss. And before we begin, I did want to mention that Tim White, our veterans agent, did a lovely job given the constraints that we're under with the COVID-19 situation, in having a very brief memorial service up at Town Hall, which you can watch on Whitman Hanson Cable Access. And Heather Gonzalez, who's on with us today, was also instrumental in putting that together, as was Carol Brewer. And they managed to do a montage of different Hanson folks who had passed and who had served. And we had the American Legion there, and it was a nice but brief ceremony. And we hope next year we'll be back to our normal parade, but we do thank Tim for everything that he did to orchestrate that. With that said, we've got Elder Affairs Mary Collins and Library Director Karen Stolfer. And John, are they with you in the room, or did we give them the call-in information?
They have the call-in information. I could try to contact them if they're not on. I can't see if they are or not.
They're both online.
Oh, okay, great. I'm sorry, ladies. You were so stealth, I wasn't aware. So if you don't mind, we're thrilled to have both of you. I want to thank you both for all of the work that you've been doing. As you always are, you're quite excellent in all that you do, but you've both been stepping up in ways that maybe people aren't even aware of during the shutdown. And that's why we've got you on here, is to kind of find out what's been going on in your neck of the woods, and what are things looking like in the near and foreseeable future. So if you don't mind, I think I'll start with Mary Collins, who is the Director of Elder Affairs. Mary, if you could just let us know how things are going. I know everybody's been very anxious about the elderly population and the folks that you serve, and would love to hear what's going on.
Well, hi, Laura. Good evening, everyone. Well, I will let you know that our doors are closed, but services have been provided throughout the pandemic. We continue to serve our community with Meals on Wheels. That, for the most part, is some of our most fragile people within the community. And we have seen an uptake in the amount of people that requested Meals on Wheels after the pandemic began. Those go out Monday through Friday, faithfully. We continue to do referrals to field assistance, home care programs. I'm also a Shine counselor, so I've been able to do that either remotely or by dropping off and picking up information from people. and a lot of phone reassurance to people. Obviously, we are concerned about the population that we serve. They are the most vulnerable, but also have a tendency at times to socially isolate, which can lead to other issues down the road. So that is my biggest concern at the present time, along with following the phases of what the governor has set out in terms of reopening. Looking at that, I do feel I'm on with the Mass Councils on Aging at least once or twice a week, getting updates, and it does look like we fall well within the phase 3, possibly towards the end of the phase 3 that the governor has suggested. So in terms of opening for programming, I think that we will have to hold on, and we have decided to try some alternative types of programming. We're actually going to be zooming into June with some programs through Zoom. Our friends group is purchasing the program for us so that we can offer something that may help with some of the folks that are dealing with some social isolation. So I guess in a nutshell, that is it. The two populations that we do serve at the Senior Center are folks that are looking for programming, whether it be educational, social, but then there's another group of people, our supportive day program clients, who are in desperate need of returning. I will tell you, I've had a number of phone calls from family members, but it's just not plausible at this time. So.
Well, Mary, you always do such a lovely job, and you've got such passion for this work that it's pretty humbling to listen to you. And I'm wondering, what can we do to support you? What do you need from us? Are you getting the resources you need from the town to do what you need to do?
Laura, I will tell you, this town, the folks have been wonderful. From our fire department, who right before this really started to take off, I was approached by Officer Royer and Rob O'Brien, who approached me about helping out with finding out who might need groceries or medication picked up for them. And so Tim Royer took that and ran with it, and has been just such a godsend to a couple of our folks within the town that just don't have anybody else to rely on. In the same sense, our police department has been incredible with offering resources for us. John has been wonderful in terms of discussing what we're going to need for prevention and that sort of thing going forward. So I feel that everybody has been incredibly proactive. As hard as it is, because it's such a fluid situation, it's like sitting back and biting your nails saying, when is this going to happen? When are we going to be able to reopen? But we have to realize that at least with the things in place that we have now, we'll be ready when the time comes. So I do have to say, I feel that we've been quite supported in all of this.
All right, thank you, Mary. And if I could oblige you, I'm just going to do a round robin with the rest of the board to see if they've got any questions or comments or what have you. With that, Mr. Dyer.
Nope, you asked the question I was going to ask. Mary, thank you very much for everything that you do.
Thank you.
Mr. Mitchell.
No questions, but Mary, thank you very much for everything. I know it's tough, and just hang in there and keep smiling like you always are.
Mr. Hickey.
Thank you.
No, no questions. I just wanted to say thank you to Mary for doing everything they possibly can to keep these programs running, with the situation that we're in.
And Mr. Bloss.
Thank you, Mary. And if there's anything I can do personally, please shout.
I shall. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Mary. We really appreciate it. Karen, I know you're on and would love to hear what's going on in the library and what your plans are. I believe as of last Monday, maybe it seems like so long ago, but you were able to, or recently, you were able to start doing curbside pickup and the like. And I'm not sure where you guys are at, but would love to hear from you.
Sure, yeah. So we have developed a reopening plan for the library, and the trustees are going to be having a virtual meeting tomorrow to adopt it. And we will be posting that document on our website for anybody that wants to view it. Similar to some other plans, it contains 4 phases. So we're going to be moving into phase 1. That's going to involve staff working in the building in a limited capacity. We're soon going to be opening our book drop to accept returns, but we want to assure people that there's no rush to return items if they're not comfortable going out. Right now, due dates for anything that's currently borrowed, they're extended until July 9th, and late fees are going to be waived until further notice. Returned items, when they come back in, they're going to be quarantined for at least 72 hours before we put them back into circulation. And then, like you said, next week, actually, we're going to try to begin offering our curbside pickup. So we're going to take requests for materials. We'll put items in a paper bag. People can pick them up outside. It's going to be completely no contact. We are still working out a few details of that, and then we'll post, once we have the process finalized, we'll be posting how it's going to work. Right now, people are going to be limited to choosing from what we have inside our building. Our statewide delivery service is not up and running yet, so we don't have access to other libraries' materials. So those are going to be our main focuses for phase 1, starting the curbside pickup and getting our book drop open. Phase 2 is going to involve allowing the public back into the building in limited numbers. We already have plastic shields installed at service desks. Phase 3 is going to, we'll be able to open up a bit more, expand services, and then phase 4 is going to be the new normal. And the timing of these later phases is going to depend on the governor's timeline. But right now we are doing virtual programming. We're going to be continuing that. So we started that a few weeks ago. We're doing weekly book chats so people can join, they can share what they're reading, get recommendations. We're also trying to include a craft component to those. So those are held on Tuesdays at 2 o'clock for adults and Thursdays at 2 o'clock for kids. And you can sign up through our calendar of events online. We're also starting to plan for summer reading, and obviously that's going to look a lot different than in the past, but we do plan to adapt it and continue it this year. And again, once we have more information, we'll post about that. Like other places, we're going to be continuing, we're going to be wearing protective gear. We're going to be increasing cleaning of surfaces. We will have reduced hours at first, and we will post those. And then just a reminder that staff are available via phone or email. So we have a lot of digital services. We're happy to get people set up with those or answer any other questions people have.
Okay, that's great. And so if people want to find out about the programs, they just go on the library website and that will give all of the details about how to dial in or whatever accessibility
on our calendar
questions.
of events, we have a link on our website. We also are posting everything to social media. We have Twitter, Facebook, Instagram. So we're doing a lot of posting with that, trying to keep people informed and entertained too. So
yeah, you guys do a great job on that. I see stuff all the time. And Karen, just if people are home and they're crawling the walls, or their kids are crawling the walls, or everybody's crawling the walls, and they're thinking about what kind of things does the library lend out? Maybe it's been a few years since I've used my library card. Maybe you could give people an idea, because I think the depth and breadth of what you've got might surprise people.
Yeah, I mean, we have obviously books, we have movies, we get the latest movies as they come in. We have music, audiobooks. We have from Green Hanson actually gave us devices. You plug them in, you plug your appliance into them, and they tell you how much electricity the appliance is using. We have those. We have e-readers, so you can check out a Nook or a Kindle. They are all preloaded with dozens of titles. So we have a lot of different stuff that, like you said, people might not be aware of.
Okay, that's awesome. And again, if you don't mind me, I'm just going to go around to everybody and just see if they've got any questions or comments. So, Mr. Dyer.
Nope, not at this time. Thank you, Karen.
Mr. Mitchell.
Karen, thank you very much for everything that you do And for the record, I am following your Twitter page.
Okay, I feel like this needs to go down in the history books, Kenny. I'm into it. That's awesome. Mr. Hickey.
Actually, Karen, I do have a question for you. The books, I'm sure that you would have children's books. So let's just say Dr. Seuss, for example. So in layman's term, and this is really just for me personally, what would I need to do? And I do have a library card, but haven't used it in a few years. What would I need to do exactly to get the books? How many could I take out? And how long would I have them for?
So normally books check out for 28 days, and then you could call us, you can go online and place a hold. So people can still place holds in our catalog. Like I said, right now you're going to be limited to what we have in our library, but if you do place a hold for an item that's not here, you can still put it on hold. It just won't come until our delivery starts up. And we usually don't have a limit on books, but for now, because we're going to be limited with the staff and hours are open, we are going to ask people to reduce, what books they check out. So maybe like 10 maximum, just so that we don't get too overwhelmed.
Okay, great.
Thank you very much.
All set, Jim?
Yes, thank you.
All right, great. Mr. Bloss.
No, Karen, just say hi to the whole staff for Joanne and me, please, and the rest of the board, I assume. I mean, we're missing everybody's faces.
I will.
Okay, great. Thank you so much, ladies. And, know that we're thinking about you. We support you, and keep the lines of communication open with Mr. Stanbrook. And, I'm sure that he will get you whatever you need. Just know that we appreciate all that you do. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, take care, ladies. Next on our agenda is Diane Cohen. Diane, you're back again. Revisiting regarding the reopening of Camp Kawani and the Cranberry Cove. So Diane, if you could give a little detail around that, that would be helpful.
Well, we've put the caretakers back to work, but our rec director said that, they should only be there one at a time. So we're trying to get as much done as possible before the opening. We're not sure still about swimming lessons and what that looks like.
I'm sorry, Diane, could we just stop the presses there for just one moment? Mr. Stanbrook, are we in agreement that the caretakers, who clearly are going to be socially distancing because there's quite a bit of room up at Camp Kawani, can only be there one at a time?
Yeah, I was just talking to Greer, and she said that we just said socially distanced, but we didn't say one at a time. So that's the first I've heard of that.
Okay, maybe
Right.
we could circle back and clarify that, because
Well, I questioned our rec director on that, and he said that he was going by typical hours that previously were given during normal operating times, and based on budget and anticipated shortfalls in the budget.
okay. Mr. Stanbrook, may I impose upon you to circle back with Mr. Boyle and seek clarity on that?
Yes, I'll do that.
Okay, that would be lovely. Please continue, Ms. Cohen.
Okay. The Cove, we are still not sure what phase we're in. We did want to still open when school ends, but I wasn't sure how the board felt about possibly opening early, maybe during after school hours, because I think if we can get our lifeguards staffed, and I'm not sure, it's going to be very hot tomorrow, and I'm sure people are just so sick and tired of being in the house and being around. I didn't know if it was possible at all to consider an earlier opening.
Okay. Well, I think there's a lot to unpack there. So we've got the logistics of it, the health the logistics of the issue itself. Are you going to have the lifeguards? Then we've got the health concerns. Are we going to be able to open that up safely without exposing anybody unnecessarily to COVID-19? And then I think we've got the financial question on the table, knowing what is happening with the town in terms of the school issue, the COVID-19 issue, all of the many competing things that we've got hitting us all at the same time in terms of our budget. So if you don't mind, Diane, I'm going to see Arlene Diaz is here from the Board of Health. I don't know if they have had a conversation about this or if she has any thoughts, but I'd like to hear from her. Then we'll kind of go to Mr. Sullivan, then we'll go around to the board and we'll just discuss it a bit.
Okay,
So
I just have a quick question. Are there any protocols right now for opening and the like? Are they saying we have to do anything? I haven't heard anything from the governor regarding this particular opening of
well, I
beaches.
think probably Ms. Diaz would be the best person to answer that. I'm going to see what her thoughts are on this, so on what the Board of Health and the health agent think. Ms. Diaz, thoughts?
Yeah, so we discussed this at a previous meeting and felt that if the Board of Selectmen voted to open the camp, that we wanted to be ready for this. We actually voted a couple weeks ago on this. For us, it would be a matter of testing the water. We would be willing to set up guidelines. I don't think the state has issued them yet, and I was on a call today and people kept pushing to get answers to try to figure out what we could do to stay ahead, because we don't want to wait till Friday to find out restaurants are able to open on Saturday because we can't do prep. They've not talked about beaches yet and swimming. They talked a little bit about pools, but they still didn't give us a solid date for that. And generally, the Cove doesn't open up until school ends. So it's usually sometime in June, right?
Right, and I wanted to be respectful of that. And then I had some people ask me, would it be opening earlier, because people are just really looking for a place to go. So I thought I would bring it up tonight. But my original, as I said last week, my original intent was to adhere to the typical end of the school year. But where I did have a couple of people reach out, I thought I might bring it out.
So some of the concerns are, we have to come up with a plan to make sure that people socially distance. Then there has to be some discussion about, are we not going to sell people passes, because then you don't want people coming there and it's full and they can't get in and complaining that they've paid for a season pass.
Right.
If you're having people come and you're limiting them, how are you going to collect money? Is there a way for people to pay that doesn't put the people there at risk for having to handling cash?
Right.
So there's a list of questions that we would have to come up with plans for, working with the Recreation Commission to figure out what is the best strategy that keeps everybody healthy and allows people to use that resource, but in a way that's controlled.
Okay. I
Okay,
do.
so
Sorry.
so can I ask that you guys find a way to connect on that? I don't, I'll go around to the rest of the board, but I certainly don't think that we want to unilaterally be making a decision to open up the Cove without hearing that there is a plan in place already. We don't want to be making this up as we go. We need to make sure that we've got a plan in place, that everybody understands who's responsible for enforcement, that we all understand how do we measure the success of opening the Cove up, and whether it is, we still feel that it's safe on an ongoing basis. How are we doing a litmus test on that? And the like. So I think what I'm hearing, Diane, is that there is no clear guidance right now. Some of the people that I've talked to have said, geez, I don't know, I get kind of nervous about the Cove just because of the setup. It's such a, that kind of shape of it. It's not like we're talking about like Duxbury Beach that's like miles long or something. It's a very it's a very small area with very limited access. And so, you'd struggle, I think, to try to find ways to make sure that people are complying. And then I don't know if you guys are talking about swim lessons, but we briefly talked about it last week. And, the notion of socially distanced while teaching swim lessons, I think these things are mutually exclusive. I'm not sure how you can really do that successfully, but maybe, I don't know, you could wear like a hazmat suit or something. I'm really not sure. So, I guess we'll kind of ask that you guys work on that, but I did know that Mr. Sullivan had a particular vantage point on this that I think that we need to also listen to. And Mr. Sullivan, I'm wondering if I could impose upon you to share that.
I'm concerned about the finances too. Yep.
Yes, thank you very much. A couple of key points I'll say going on. One, at the very minimum, the Cove is only budgeted to open on June 15th. So opening it earlier, you're going to run out of money.
Okay.
And either a transfer or something like that, especially, with getting it ramped up and everything ready in place. It's been closed. Two, going forward beyond this, revenues are down. Expenditures are up. It's going to require a larger supplement from the town, even larger than this year, because the reserves are down. The
Right.
retained earnings
Revenue.
are non-existent in the recreation department. So going into a year where we're asking for an override and increasing the expenses without being able to say the revenues are keeping pace, because the revenues are going to be way down. Is going to create an even larger deficit to overcome. So my recommendation, unfortunately, would be to keep Cranberry Cove and all of that closed as long as possible.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, so with that, Diane, I'm going to just kind of do a round robin and see what everybody's thoughts are. Mr. Dyer?
Hi, everyone. The governor had set out guidelines for beaches, coastal and inland on May 18th. And what he had suggested was to keep on the social distancing, 12 feet apart, from your towel. So I think that there'd be a lot of planning on the recreation side of how do you implement that. And then also too, if you have to limit your capacity, are you guys going to kind of do it? One idea was to do the timed sessions. So you sign up for an hour, you sign up between 11 and 12. At the end of 12 o'clock, you have to leave if there's more people that want to get in or whatever the case may be. That's for recreation to figure out. But there are guidelines that were put out. It can be found on mass.gov/EEA. And there's some good guidelines there for everyone to know. And they still require everyone to wear masks, even if you're on the beach. So it might not be your typical, let's go out and go sunbathing. It might be, let's go for a quick dip to cool off and get out and move on, rather than recreating at Cranberry Cove.
And Mr. Dyer, I think you and I had discussed this, or at least in my mind we did. I think that we had discussed that potentially, they maybe would operate this similar to the way that restaurants are going to have to, because you're going to have tracing. So you almost have like reservations, like you've described, and you've got to go, the recreation department would decide, okay, we think our capacity with the socially distancing and given the lifeguards and all that good stuff and staffing, we can only handle, I'm just making this up, 20 people at the beach at a time, or whatever that number is. And then you have an online functionality for people to sign up and book themselves for that time, so that we're staffed appropriately, and and you know who it is, so that if you've got any kind of tracing requirement, that you're able to tell people, gee, you were on the beach at such and such a time, and 3 people around you tested positively. I'm painting a very bleak picture, but that type of thing. I know that that's something that we had discussed. And so I think, Diane, what I'm hearing from Matt and kind of what I've heard from Arlene is, we've got to have a plan. So I think it's a bit premature right now, but we'll just keep going if you don't mind. We'll see what Mr. Mitchell and Mr. Hickey and Mr. Bloss.
Well, I would think everybody will think the same thing. And yes, I know you have to do that. I only brought it up just because I had a couple of requests and I wanted to be honest and say I would ask.
No, we
So-
appreciate that. And you know what, Diane? We do not have groupthink on this Board of Selectmen. So you may be surprised what other people have to say. Mr. Mitchell.
I agree that we definitely got to have a plan. So if Diane works with the Board of Health to come up with something, I think the season pass, you should just eliminate that for the season because it is going to just create problems. But I also think that Mr. Sullivan brings up a good point too. When do we want to open it? Or do we want to open it at all? I think that not tonight, but I think that needs to be a discussion at some point as well.
Okay, great points, Mr. Mitchell.
You mean
Mr. Hickey.
I'm sorry, can I ask, do you mean a discussion with the Rec Commission or a discussion with the Board of Selectmen?
I think a discussion with both.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yep.
And Board of Health. Okay.
Yep, this is all an all hands on deck discussion. Mr. Hickey.
Absolutely. And I agree with everyone so far. Matt's information was excellent, which the governor put out on May 18th, like Matt said. And Kevin is absolutely right. We may actually have to open later than the 15th if we open at all. What I would like to see, we do have a meeting on June 9th. I would like to see a clear-cut plan, between the Rec Commission, the Board of Health, and the Selectmen, if need be, to have a plan in place before we even discuss any kind of vote. Laura, you were absolutely correct at the beginning when you had said that, we have to have a plan. We're not going to do this by the seat of our pants. So that's my thought.
All right, thanks, Jim. Appreciated. Mr. Bloss.
Wow, what a logistical nightmare this is. First question, does the town have an online presence that actually accepts like credit cards for payment?
The town does, however, internet access is a hit or miss at best down at the camp, and swiping a card down at the camp, we don't have right now a method to do that. We don't have a machine or anything. We could obviously get one, but working with Unipay, I guess when you pay online, and I know this from just doing it myself, to use a debit card or anything, there's a rather exorbitant fee of $3 when you're only paying $5 for a day pass or whatever. So it's sort of, we would need to work around a lot of things like that.
I'm looking, as a former lifeguard and rec member, and recognizing how difficult it actually is policing the Cove.
Yep.
I'm just looking at some young gatekeeper trying to tell a group of people that the beach is full, that they can't come back, and there's nothing available until 3 o'clock tomorrow. And I mean, in the old days, we had a police presence there constantly. That doesn't happen anymore. But it's looking to me like by opening the Cove, actually at all. But I mean, I'm not saying that we're not going to open the Cove at some point. But as soon as we open the Cove, I just foresee this is going to become difficult to control, and especially for kids. The staff down at Cranberry Cove are kids, and some of them are more mature than others, but it's not the same as having the police backing up right there when the situation starts, because I just see situations in this heat with this pandemic and masks and social distancing. I get proud of Massachusetts. I do think we're a fairly intelligent state, but I think as soon as we open up, there are going to be serious confrontations at the gate.
Yep, I think you're right.
Is a
Diane,
police
go ahead.
is a police presence even a possibility during these times if people should decide the Cove should open?
I think we'll have to cross that bridge when we get to it, Diane, because again, we are looking at,
It's a,
it's a, we're looking at catastrophic budget situation. And I know that it doesn't sound like a lot of money to have a police presence there, but you know, this all adds up. And, you know, so we're just going to try to do the best we can, as this board always does, to balance the competing needs with the money that we have to fill those needs. And that's the best that we can do. And that's what we do all the time. And, you know, we're being called upon to step up our game and balance even more needs with even less money. But we'll try. But I think as a first preliminary step, and as Mr. Hickey mentioned, and I think pretty much everybody on the call said, I would implore you, you know, to come up with a reopening plan. And look, whether it's for this summer or it's next summer, I mean, you know, from what we're hearing, I don't know when this is all going to go away, or when we're going to be able to not utter the words COVID-19, social distancing, and wearing masks, and all of those other words that I just really wish never made it into my vocabulary. You know, I don't know when we're going to be able to abolish those from our you know, language, but you know, you may need to have a plan next year. We may be talking, whatever you come up with, you know, it might be slightly different, but depending upon how this evolves and, you know, what they find with additional research and guidance and all that other stuff, we may still be looking at something. So that's my way of saying, I don't think if you did it now, it's going to be all for naught. It's not going to be a wasted effort. And I think maybe just going through the exercise of you talking to the Board of Health, and, you know, when I say you, I mean your commission talking to the Board of Health, and thinking through all of those many moving parts may ultimately help you guys reach a conclusion, whatever that conclusion is. But what I'm hearing from Mr. Mitchell, Mr. Sullivan, and the others on the phone is we don't think opening up early, certainly without a solid plan in hand, is well advised. So what I will plan to do, if you don't mind, Diane, is we'll put you on, we'll pencil you in for our July 9th meeting, and you can become a frequent guest of ours. You know, you can circle back and let us know what kind of progress you've made in speaking with the Board of Health and with your board. And, you know, by then maybe some other things will have evolved, and we may get some additional, you know, details and guidance beyond what was published on May 18th.
Or did you say July 9th or June 9th?
I may have said July just because mentally I'm probably jumping ahead, but I meant June.
Okay, thank you.
And Madam Chairman, can I just circle back then a minute and say, I mean, we recognize as a board, and Kevin has made it clear. I mean, we're facing an $864,000 deficit.
I know.
We have an override proposition on the ballot. There's certainly no guarantee that passes. And if $864,000 should be cut from the budget, I mean, Diane, we're looking at a point now where, okay, there is nothing for recreation. So,
oh, I know.
But I'm thinking, therefore, that your plan, as you sit down as a commission and with a Board of Health, your plan has to be, all right, how many people are going to be on the beach? What is each of those persons going to pay for their 1 or 2 hour sessions on the beach? And what amount of lifeguards will that cover from that payment? Because it would have to be a wash. The people coming onto the beach would have to be totally supporting the lifeguards on the beach.
Absolutely.
Right, you're saying it needs to be cost effective. Like, we can't be taking it on the chin to, you know, I mean, and Mr. Mitchell mentioned at our meeting last week that we know the kids are bouncing off the walls and the parents are too. This has been a very difficult situation. Everybody's in close confines. Parents are having to homeschool, and I'm sure that the thought of being able to go to the Cove and enjoy themselves and get to some sense of normalcy of what they've had in the past, it's very, very appealing. But we've got all these other complicating factors that we need to look at.
No, and I knew that, and that was my reply, but like I said, I still said I would bring it, so I brought it, and now it's on the record. And
okay, awesome.
I think it makes the most sense too. We
All
are
right,
just
now, when are you meeting next, Diane? When's your next meeting with your Recreation Commission?
Thursday.
Okay, all right. So I hope you and Ms. Diaz and, you know, your respective board/commission will connect and work together on this. And, you know, and I'm sure that perhaps the Board of Health would also have guidance as far as the lodge and, you know, bathroom facilities and all those types of things, because there are different regulations that apply to each of those situations.
Yes, there
Mr.
are.
Chair,
Mr. Dyer.
through you to Diane, I think one thing, I hate to push business away, but I look at the Cove as a cooling center. Heat waves kill more people than any other natural disaster. So I think it would be wise for us to educate the public of other public watering holes or beaches or cooling centers in the area, just to make sure that we provide relief to people, just in case we do have to go to a limited capacity at the Cove. And that way it might help divert a little bit of that traffic, you know, lower those chances of an incident that Wes was talking about at the gate of someone becoming profusely upset about not being able to go cool off. So I think that might be a wise idea, just to kind of educate people of other resources on the South Shore to go cool off. And
So,
we could
Mr.
set-
Dyer, who are you suggesting should work on that? Maybe, again, cooperatively with the Camp Quaney folks and the Board of Health, or Board of Health?
Yeah,
I'm not sure.
both would be great, because heat stroke is a health concern.
Right.
But also too, with recreation, they have the following of the public for, you know, they're known as the Cove. So people are going to be looking at the Cove for places to go cool off rather than the Board of Health. So it might be a good partnership there as well.
Okay, good
agree.
stuff. All right, great. Thank you, Diane. We'll put you on for June 9th, and just circle back with us, you know, the week before, preferably like the Wednesday before, and just tell us if you're on task and you'll have anything to tell us about on the 9th. And if not, then we'll find another date and have you come in and speak with us then.
I will speak with the rec director and we will get on this and see what happens, and I will let you know.
Okay, great. Thank you for coming, and thank you for sharing.
Thank you, everybody.
All right, take care. Next up, we have Juvie Hartwig from Hanson Rotary Club, and she is speaking to us about 2 items. And I believe you got information forwarded to you regarding these items, which is the food pantry fundraiser on the town green and hosting a story walk at Camp Quaney. So Juvie, since we'll have to take this as 2 separate votes, if you could speak to us about the food pantry fundraiser on the town green. We'll kind of talk about that, work out the kinks, and then take a vote, and then we'll move on to the hosting a story walk at Camp Quaney.
Okay, thank you. So for the Rotary Club, we purchased 200 signs. We're actually doing this for Rockland and Hanson because the Rotary Club covers both communities. So for Hanson, we have 200 signs that say, "I support my food pantry." We looked around the area, and the next 2 towns over, Abington and Whitman, had very successful fundraisers for their food pantry. I believe they raised $14,000. That was amazing. We'd love to, come close, but we're thinking that if people made a donation of $25, they could get a lawn sign. We thought that for many people, $25 is a lot of money. So understanding that people are really stretched to the limit, whatever donation they can make would be great. We'd collect it on behalf of Hanson Food Pantry. We actually got a grant, $1,000 from our Rotary district that was split between Rockland and Hanson. And in addition to that, we got a donation from J.C. Taylor, another $500 that was split again from Rockland and Hanson. So we're starting out with $750 for the food pantry, and then we just feel that people will come when they see these signs. It would be a great way to advertise the Route 58 by Town Hall there. A lot of people drive through there. We're also hoping to set up at Indian Head Plaza, another frequently visited place, so that people can make a donation, can either walk up to a tent that we'll set up, with social distancing. There'll be maybe 2 Rotarians. I know one of the 2-hour sessions I'm covering it with my son. So we'll have 1 or 2 Rotarians there. We have the capacity to take credit cards and checks. We're also a nonprofit, so we're just basically being an avenue for a donation, and people can certainly donate right to the food pantry. So we are thinking that a lot of people will most likely stop and at least inquire. If they order online, we do have a couple of volunteers that will be dropping off the signs. So it was our hope that the town would support the efforts by allowing us to put the signs out. We wanted to kind of begin Saturday, May 30th, and then maybe into May 31st. We don't know how many volunteers we want to end up with, but 2-3 day event. Hopefully we'll sell quite a few of those signs and raise some much needed funds for the food pantry.
Okay, I think you're going to be pleasantly surprised, and if the surrounding towns were any indication, I think you're going to sell out of your 200. I will tell you, Hanson is historically extremely generous to the food pantry. They see the need and they give. So I thank you for doing it, and thank you guys for thinking of the food pantry. If you don't mind, I'm just going to do a round robin. What I did hear you say is that you've got an ability to do contactless sales, so people don't have to come up and exchange cash or really even come in contact with anybody. They could just do it online. You guys would drop the sign off too.
Yes, yeah, that's another feature that we have. So we just
Okay,
wanted,
great.
honestly, the visibility from Route 58 to just kind of get people excited about, the event.
Okay, all right. Mr. Dyer, questions, thoughts, comments?
No questions at this time. I think it's a great effort. So Juvie, thank you. And thank you to the Rotarians. I really appreciate this effort. So that's all.
All right, thanks, Matt. Mr. Mitchell?
I think it's a great idea. I'm all for it. Thank you.
Okay, awesome. Mr. Hickey?
Absolutely. Thank you, Joey. Excellent idea.
Okay, fabulous. Mr. Bloss?
So how about I just make a motion to approve the food pantry fundraiser on Town Green.
Second by Matt.
Second.
All right, fabulous. Roll call vote. Mr. Dyer?
Aye.
Mr. Mitchell?
Aye.
Mr. Hickey?
Aye.
Mr. Bloss?
Aye.
And Ms. Kemet? I cannot vote. I'm recusing myself because I'm on the food pantry board, but I do thank you, Juvie. So we've got
Thank you.
your first item down and your second item. Talk to us about hosting a story walk at Camp Kewanee. What does this entail?
So this is actually we had paid for the hall for an event that was postponed. So what we thought that we could do, the museum is closed at the Kingston Mall. The entire Kingston Mall has been closed. So it's been hard to connect with our families, and the hiking activity that we came up with was well received by the families that were going to go to Camp Kewanee for the bunny breakfast. What our hope was to maybe rent the south cabins and just the facility, just so that we have a starting point and an end point where they do the walk. And I don't know if behind the south cabins, if that's called Indian Head Pond, I think, the back pastures. I don't really know what the name of that property is, but I believe it's town property, but it's behind Camp Kewanee. I walked it with my family, and so we have a lot of families with younger children, so little feet. But it was beautiful and a great place for families with young children to just kind of get out and walk. We are looking to do the story walk, which is actually has been done by a lot of other children's museums. And the whole idea is that you walk a path. It's a predetermined path. For us, it's going to be, no more than a mile, because like I said, we had little kids. And as you go a couple I don't know, 20, 30 yards or so, you read parts of a story. And the story is actually called A Bird's Eye View from Dory Jameson, who so kindly donated her children's book. She wrote this book, which is really exciting because she's giving us copies of the book. We're going to get them printed up on yard signs. I think Webster Printing has the ability to do this for us. So you're actually, if you can imagine, you're walking and reading pieces of the story. So when you're done with the walk, you do a circle because the path is circular behind Camp Kiwanee. When the families get to the very end, the kids get, to answer a couple of fun questions. They get a little treat. And then we encourage families to find a spot around the camp just so that, they can bring their own treats, have a snack. And there will be, there's really no contact between the volunteers and families. This is just kind of a structured walk. And we do have families scheduled to come in on the hour. So we were going to do about, 10 families per hour, anticipating that the attention span of these little kids would be about an hour anyway. So it was, for me, I thought it would be a great way to showcase the property, since we know a lot of these families are coming from the surrounding towns. So your Whitmans and your East Bridgewater, Hanover, just a great way to get families outside and also to showcase the camp.
All right. I mean, what a magical idea. The whole thing just sounds perfectly magical and lovely of Dory to donate that. So that's just like another wonderful aspect of it, and it's benefiting the South Shore Children's Museum. I mean, this is like win, 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 win. My only concern, and I don't know where the other guys stand on this, but what was the date that you were looking at? I thought it was like June 15th, and it just made me a little anxious.
Well, I was thinking, the sooner, the better for us, just because I know that a lot of our families are really looking for an opportunity to enjoy going out and just having extracurricular activities, because as you all know, everything has been canceled for a lot of our families. So we were looking at June 15th, knowing that we would have some social distancing precautions in place. But since we're thinking about a larger area, we don't see this being kind of an event that's going to be crowded. And there's certainly enough space that I think conservatively 10 families would still not be a crowd. And we would do this over a period of the like a morning. It would be like a 3-4 hour event. And then we would spread it between Saturday and Sunday, because we had about 71 families pre-register for the bunny breakfast. And I can tell you, maybe half have agreed to do this or are willing to come out and do this. So we don't have a big crowd. This is really kind of just a way to try it out, number one, and number two, just kind of get some benefit out of the beautiful grounds at Camp Kiwanee.
Okay, and because you're on the Recreation Commission, but Diane, I think, is still on too. Have we officially voted to open up the Camp Kiwanee grounds to people? I'm just not sure where we're at on that. I don't recall having voted that yet.
I'm not clear on that. All I know was that I was under the impression that that campgrounds were open after the 18th, I believe. So I'm not clear on that. I know
Well, the governor allows the campgrounds to be open, subject to certain, restrictions and all of that. But really, that's more for just like the camping. But because that's a town property, I think action needs to be taken. Well, I mean, in my estimation, the Recreation Commission would need to recommend to the Board of Selectmen that they'd like to entertain having it open. And I don't recall us ever having that conversation. Diane, are you still on the line?
I am still on the line. We have a meeting Thursday, and again, I think it's something that we would need our protocols set for. And again, we would need to speak with Board of Health and everything else and have everything in place before we could feel comfortable opening it up again.
Okay,
And
so,
we may even do it in phases. You know, we're going to talk about a possible drive-in movie night, things like that.
okay, so I'm struggling with how to be responsive to what you're requesting, Juvie, in light of the fact that you guys, the Recreation Commission, isn't meeting until this Thursday. Our next scheduled meeting is not until June 9th. That is not going to give you sufficient time even if you were able to wave a magic wand and the Recreation Commission were to say, you know what, we can get a plan in place. We feel very comfortable. We've got protocols. I'm not sure. I mean, how malleable are you on that date?
Well, I think I would need some time to give our parents some planning time. I feel like that if June 9th is your next meeting to approve any of this, I wouldn't have time to kind of roll out with the conversation. I know we had talked about alternatives to our families. We were just kind of like asking what our families are interested in doing. So this was just an idea. We took a poll and asked to try to gauge the interest, but we haven't officially advertised this. But we typically need our families are tuned in, so we typically need a couple of weeks to kind of get let them know that we're doing something. So I guess if not the weekend of the 13th, the 14th, I would ask to do the end of June to give us at least a 2-week turnaround to invite some of those families that had shown some interest. So maybe the end of June as opposed to the 14th, 15th.
Okay, if you don't mind, I'm just going to do a round robin and see what others' thoughts are. Mr. Dyer, thoughts, comments, questions?
One of my first thoughts on this was, I know, Judy, you said to limit it to 10 families at a time per hour, or whatever that may be. I can just see 10 families all starting at the same hour, all showing up at the same place. And, if you have a family of 4 and you have 10 families, that's 40 people all gathering in the south end to start, and they're going to be right on top of each other as they're going through the story walk. So I have some concerns with social distancing there. I think it's a really great idea. I think in normal times, I'd be behind this 100%. But for right now, I don't think that this is really thought out in the sense of social distancing, and it's going to be really hard to control that. One family may stay at station 1 longer than expected, and now they're running into the second family behind them. I think it might be a big traffic jam there. And then the second thought too is when we do this in the future, one thing that I would like to see is that we have some good educational material out there saying, watch out, because Smitty's Bogs, where you're proposing to walk, is full of poison ivy. And, a family that may not be aware of poison ivy may have their kids running right through it, and then later on they might be not too satisfied about it. And then also too, ticks, and have some education out there about ticks, just to make sure that we're protecting our families and making sure they're educated about that area. But other than that, I think it's a great idea. I just don't think right now it's logistically possible to do this.
Yeah, and I was thinking about the tick thing too, Matt. And as far as the poison ivy and the tick, Juvie, I think you could easily, if you've got like a registration, just do a little sheet like, hey, please read this before you
Yes.
go on your
Oh,
walk.
absolutely. Yeah, we have a because we do have insurance as well, so that we have these clause things that when people participate in our events, that we have them sign it, so that when we have our touch a truck, even we have a special little clipboard that we have to kind of make sure that parents sign are aware of the dangers of even a touch a truck. So that we definitely had been thinking about that. But the other thing that we weren't clear on was the amount of people. We are assuming that as into the summer months, that the
Did we lose you, Juvie?
I'll text her.
Okay.
You know, do you know what I mean? Like there would be,
Juvie, I think you were working up to a crescendo and you cut out.
oh, I'm sorry. Okay, no, I thought that the numbers of people gathering would be a little bit higher later on in the summer as we go into. So if it's the end of June or so, I would be thinking that we would be leaving phase 1 and going on to about phase 2, phase 3. So I'm not sure, but I was under the impression that the numbers were going to be higher than, you know, than 10 people. I thought it would be, but I mean, I could be wrong. So I guess I understand.
Yeah, I'm not, I think that's to be determined, because they do keep talking about people that are related to you, people that you're living with, like even when they're talking about like the numbers getting larger, like keep it, you know, play it close to the vest with people that you know have been socially distancing and that are related to you, et cetera, et cetera. So I'm not sure, you know, by the end of June that it's going to be like, hey, you know, mix and mingle with, you know, with other people. I'm not sure that we'll be there, but I guess we just don't know yet. But we'll just, let me just continue on with Mr. Mitchell, Mr. Hickey, and Mr. Bloss, and then we'll circle back. Mr. Mitchell?
I think it's a great idea, but I just don't like the timing. It's just way too soon. You know, I think maybe if they could push it off to the end of summer, not the end of spring, it might be a better idea. But you definitely would have to have a plan. She would have to sit with either recreation or the Board of Health and have that plan with the social distancing, because that's definitely a concern. And also, you're right, Laura, they Rec Commission would have to approve that and then send that to us for us to vote on it.
Mhm.
So I said it's the timing for me.
Okay. All right. Thanks, Mr. Mitchell. Mr. Hickey?
Same here. We actually have a meeting next week, also June 2nd. But
I think we do tentatively, Jim, but I think one of the things on our agenda was Greer and John had worked on a new agenda based on the change of the town. I mean, a new selectmen's calendar based on the based on our changing of the town meeting. So if we adopt that, then our next meeting will be June 9th.
oh, okay. Then
Yeah.
yeah, we definitely do not have enough time. And you know, I don't speak for everyone, but in the past couple of meetings, you know, we've postponed town meeting because of social distancing. Right now, we're talking about possibly not opening up the camp because of social distancing. For me personally, I need to see detailed plans before I can entertain a vote on anything right now that is going to involve people getting together. I mean, with the food pantry, you know, that was kind of easy. There's not going to be you know, too many people gathered. It's a one-on-one situation. If you two decide to go down to town hall and get a sign, so it's a one-on-one. But this is totally different, and you know, I need detailed plans on everything right now. But thank you,
Okay.
great idea.
All right. Mr. Bloss?
Nothing to add to that. Sorry, Juvie. We'll see you on June 9th, I guess.
Yeah, so Juvie, I'm sure I know how you are and you put your heart and soul into everything. And so I hope that you're hearing that we love this idea, but that the timing is really, you know, really unfortunate right now. So if there's some way that you could work with the Recreation Commission and I think since Diane and Arlene are going to be talking about, you know, how to reopen the Cove and everything else, I think this dovetails into that conversation in terms of, you know, what are the parameters, what are the rules of engagement for you to be able to have that.
Yes, and I think, you know, this was something that was part of our conversation for activities at the camp anyway, but knowing that I needed to come up with a replacement for the other event that we had at the camp. So this was something, again, like a lot of our parents were inquiring. So thought I'd give it a shot, but certainly, can be done if it's more comfortable at another time, maybe later in the summer. So definitely I think this is already on the agenda. So once we get some more of those plans, and then of course with the time, as we get into the, the phases, perhaps we'll be allowed to have just a few more people, not necessarily mingling, but I mean, I understand in passing, we don't need to create, opportunities, that would be difficult for people. So yeah, I'll definitely come back maybe later on this summer to see if we can pull it off. But at least it's it's the bugs in your ear, so we'll move forward with that.
All right, well, great, and keep up all of the lovely things that you do and all of your hard work. We always appreciate it. You're a real community organizer, and it's much appreciated. But just make sure you circle back with Arlene and the Recreation Commission. I'm sure you guys will come up with the right plan and the right timing around that, and then you can present it to us. So thank you, we appreciate it.
Thank you.
Okay, next up, Mr. Stanbrook. I mean, I think it's fairly self-explanatory, but we've got on the agenda request for 7/31/20 WHRSD graduation ceremony. What information do you have on that?
Yes, thank you. So I received an email, and so did Mr. Lynham in Whitman, regarding that Whitman-Hanson Regional School District would like to have their graduation ceremony on July 31st, 2020. And they wanted me to route it around to whoever might have an interest in what's going on there. So I contacted the fire chief, the police chief, and the health agent, and asked what they thought about that. And they were in agreement that they didn't have a problem with what they were proposing, and as long as they were able to meet a few weeks beforehand to go over the logistics. There may be, for example, there may be a fire detail needed. There may be other things that haven't been, worked out yet, but they didn't have a problem with the concept of it. They'd be meeting, again, July 31st, 2020, they'd have a graduation for the seniors. It would be outside on the turf field at the high school. They would invite friends and family if possible, if the distancing restrictions have been lifted. If they haven't been lifted, then they would be no audience allowed at the ceremony, and they would have the normal distancing in place, and it could be live streamed via the press box or local cable. So just wanted to kind of get the word out and see if what the board thought of that.
Okay, Ms. Diaz, could I ask for your perspective, and then we'll do a round robin with everybody?
It will be some guidance coming out about graduations. The email that Mr. Stanbrook was talking about was also sent to all the Board of Health members, and we all responded individually because it was after our meeting. I didn't have a problem with it because of the social distancing. The kids are going to be out in the field. And again, people are aware if we can't have an audience there, we can't have an audience there. But we didn't see any issues with it, the way that it was planned out and the way that it was explained that was going to happen. Okay,
so you guys haven't formally taken a vote because this kind of was late breaking, came after your last meeting. Are you anticipating taking a vote?
What we did was Teresa sent us each an individual, forwarded the email, and we responded directly to her. But it was right after our meeting. But I don't know, but I would think that most people didn't have an issue with it. I know that I did.
Okay, and so do you anticipate bringing this up at your next meeting and taking a formal vote of the entire Board of Health?
Definitely, yeah. And by then we might have more information too.
And when is that meeting, Arlene? When is your next meeting?
Our next meeting is the beginning of June. The date is June 2nd.
Okay. With that, then I'm just going to go around and see if anybody had any questions or concerns. Mr. Dyer.
I'm a little bit wary on this one. I would say refer to the governor and see what he has to say. But I just said no to 10 families meeting
Yep.
At the same hour for a story time. I don't think having 400 kids on a turf field is any better. You know, I would hope that our students would adhere to the policies, but this is a time of celebration, and I don't see 400 students respecting the social distancing guidelines. So I just have concerns on that front. You know, if things loosen up in the next few weeks and the governor says go for it, I'm all for it. But for right now, I can't say no to 10 families and yes to 400 students. I just think that'd be unfair.
Yep, well put, Mr. Dyer. Mr. Mitchell?
I'd be okay with it, you know, as long as all the seats are, you know, 6 feet or 10 feet away. They already said that the families, they'll make a decision on that, you know, obviously before there, but it's tough. It's high school graduation. You know, that field is pretty big. So I think you can socially distance 400 kids if you had to on that field. So I would be in favor of this.
Okay. And Mr. Hickey, thoughts, questions, concerns?
I personally, I would like to wait and until the Board of Health has their next meeting. Again, it's all about information. You know, by 31st, you might think it's a long way away, but it's not, and I understand that. But we're only in phase 1 right now.
Mhm.
So again, I need more information, and I'd like to wait until the Board of Health meets.
Okay. And Mr. Bloss?
I'm I'm just not sure that our vote right now means that this is going to happen. They made a request. I'm more than willing, I think like Kenny, yes, I honor that request, that I have no assurance that June 31st it's going to be possible. If the governor says no, if the state, if we haven't leveled the curve, anything could change, but we're just saying that as a board, I think we're just saying, yeah, if it's possible, if it's possible, I'm for it.
Yeah, I agreed. I mean, we can't really, I don't feel like what I'm hearing you guys say, and what I feel is I don't see how it can really take like a binding vote to say absolutely on the 31st you can hold this, because there's so many facts that are going to play into this, not the least of which is the Board of Health hasn't officially weighed in on it. And we don't know what state things are going to be in then and what the regulations are going to be. So, I mean, John, what are they looking for, like a formal vote from us, or what are they looking for?
I'm reading from the email now. It says that forward this to whoever you must to grant this approval to us. If that call is mine, then I guess I'd make it. I wanted to, if it is my call, and again, I don't know if it is, at least I wanted to see what the board thought about it before I made the call.
Well, it sounds, I think it's the board's decision to make. And I think that I don't know that we can grant approval at this point. I think we need to know more about what the plan is and make sure that the Board of Health is comfortable with that plan and that they've weighed in on it. And I believe it would be our Board of Health that prevails because it is in Hanson. Is that correct? Didn't we have this question before about mosquitoes and it ended up that Hanson prevails because it's in Hanson?
I believe
Mr. Bloss?
90% of the schools.
Yes, we did.
Yes, okay. I was getting a sense of deja vu. Okay, so John, I
Ms.
don't
Chair?
think we're, yes, Mr. Dyer.
I would move to defer further guidance from the governor's office and a recommendation from the Board of Health.
Okay, a second on that?
Second.
Okay. All in favor of deferring to the governor's guidance and waiting to hear from the Board of Health? Mr. Dyer,
Aye.
Mr. Mitchell,
Aye.
Mr. Hickey,
Aye.
Mr. Bloss,
Aye.
and Ms. Kemet, aye. Okay, thank you, John. So hopefully you can convey that. And and again, we're supportive conceptually, but there's just so many unanswered questions right now. Ms. Diaz, you are here to give us a Board of Health update.
Yeah, I don't know that there's much we haven't already talked about. We had a call today. We'll have another call on Friday. They're trying to make sure that the guidance is as clear as possible for people. So there was a lot of talk today about golf and a couple of other things, and what restaurants, and if they open and they have outside seating, can they serve food outside? And the answer to that was no, even though one of our local towns is having a problem with that. We probably during the week are engaged in 4 to 5 calls, sometimes 2 or 3 a day with updates. I'm hoping phase 2 will allow us to open up a lot. We've not had a lot of issues. We're going to begin to look at what phase 2 means in terms of restaurants that haven't been opened that are going to need inspections, businesses that maybe haven't been opened, issues that will around that. But right now it's just sort of trying to keep up with all of the new guidance that comes along and to be prepared to put it into action as soon as possible.
Yeah, and I mean, this is evolving at a breakneck speed, really, but in other ways so slowly that it's ridiculous. But one of the things that I think I saw today, or it may have been over the weekend, was that they're really trying to make a push for restaurants because of how strict the guidance is right now in terms of reopening for in dining, in restaurant dining, that there's a push to allow restaurants that otherwise do not have outdoor dining capacity, like they haven't built a patio or actually formally done anything, to maybe put up some, I don't want to say makeshift types of things, but maybe like tents and tables that really they ordinarily wouldn't probably put up there in a long-term way, but just to get them through this interim period of being able to open up for in-restaurant dining and the takeout, which they're able to do now, some intermediary measure that allows them to have more capacity to serve people and maybe gives people some much needed options other than take home and sitting at Mont Ponce and watching the sun set. I have you guys talked about that at all? Because I know our board, as the licensing board for alcohol, would have a role in having to approve the outdoor seating. And I think, we're very supportive of small businesses. And obviously, I think generally want to do whatever we can to try to help them along. But have you guys talked about that at all?
We haven't, because the state has not yet lifted. That was one of the things we talked about. One of the questions on the call today was, can restaurants that normally would have seating inside put tables outside and allow people to buy food takeout and sit outside at the tables and eat it? And the state said absolutely not. They're not allowing sit down eating anywhere yet. Everything is still curbside. It's still takeout. So
okay, because I thought something was released today. I'll have to look for that, Arlene, and I'll send it to you, because I thought there was something released today, but I'll look and see if I can find it. And how did I think you had volunteered to be part of that pop-up testing site that was at McQuon on Friday. What kind of response did you get in? I know that Sean, when he was here, and I can't recall the woman's name, I think it was Ann something, had said that they might do another testing date, and I'm just wondering if you could give us an update on that.
So the testing we was there at 11, and by 11:40, we had tested 22 people. That was people that had signed up. They kept the registration open until like late Thursday afternoon. And then once we had everybody that was on the list, the lab tech packed everything up, but we did have people show up saying that they had just heard about it and they wanted to sign up. There was a couple people that had missed it. Sean and I did talk about it, but we didn't set a date for the next one. It was really going to be, we felt like if we had more notice, people would have been able to have been aware of the testing and they would have been able to sign up. because like I said, there were a couple
Yeah.
of people we had to turn away. It was very smooth. People actually, we set up a tent in front of the door where you used to go into McQuon. We would have people pull up in their vehicle. They would get out of their vehicle, sit in the chair. It was 2 or 3 minutes. They were back in their vehicle and gone.
Okay, well,
It
that
was
sounds
very
great. I
smooth.
mean, I agree. I think if we had had a little bit more lead time, and I'm not pointing fingers because I think it was,
No.
you know, everybody was doing the best they could, just trying to orchestrate it. But I think probably you would have gotten more signups. I did see something rather interesting today that maybe you and Gil and the rest of the Board of Health could look into, was that the town of Whitman is somehow partnering, and they have got, if you can go to Brockton if you're from Whitman, and you can get a free test and you don't have to be symptomatic. So I'm not sure how they effectuated that. It was Justin Evans that had posted it today on social media. And when I have an opportunity, I'll reach out to him and see if I can get a little bit more detail around that. And if I do, I'll share it with you. But I thought that was an
Okay.
interesting concept. I don't know that people from Hanson and Whitman are particularly going to want to go to Brockton, only because it is a hot spot.
It is a hot spot.
You know,
Right.
the thought of kind of going into the lion's den might be a little bit anxiety provoking to people, but you know, it was an interesting concept that they were able to offer that. So if I get some more details, I'll share it with you.
Definitely. And I would think if we wanted to do another one, we would at least need a week lead time so that people would have an opportunity to get the information to sign up. And people didn't have a problem signing up. They didn't have a problem paying. And it just was very smooth.
Okay, well, just you know, keep us in the loop. We had voted at the last meeting, you know, that you could do this more than once. It wasn't a one-time approval, but we would like to just kind of know so we can keep our fingers on the pulse. If you didn't have anything else, then we're going to move on to our next subject, which is Proposition 2.5 override on the town election ballot.
Okay, if nobody has any questions for me, I'm all set.
Did anybody have any questions?
Mr. Chair,
Yes, Mr. Dyer.
through you to Arlene. Arlene, could you just reach out to the American Legion and just work with them on reopening and what they can and cannot do at this time? The other day at the memorial, we got a lot of feedback that, you know, they're eager to get back there. So whatever we can do to support them, that would be great.
Yes.
Okay,
Thank you.
great. Thank you, Mr. Dyer. Mr. Stanbrook, did you want to lay this up for us for a discussion?
Yes, thank you. So on our Friday meeting, we had last Friday, there was a Board of Selectmen's meeting this question was a question to assess an additional $800,000 in real estate and personal property taxes was voted by the Selectmen 5-0 to put that amount of money in a question at the end of the election that we're going to have on June 27th, on the end of that ballot. So when people go to the elections on June 27th, they're going to see the usual votes for 2 selectmen and assessors and other office holders, and then there'll also be another question for Proposition 2.5 override for $800,000 on real estate and personal property taxes. And on Friday's meeting, Mr. Sullivan and Mr. Hassett were also in on that meeting, and we had a discussion about it. So this will be on the election, and the next one on the agenda is to formally execute that election warrant, and that question will be on that warrant.
Okay, and again, just to clarify, for those who may be wondering, how did we get to the place where we have an override? I thought the town was running their finances well. We haven't had an override for years. What's happening here? I think I would call to your attention the series of events that has happened since last August, where we first learned that the statutory method was the method that the state had put into education reform back in the late 1990s. And although our regional agreement stipulates a per pupil methodology, which is a 40-60 split at present. The move to statutory shifts it so that it looks more like we're paying 46% of the cost for under statutory. And that's a very large swing for a very small town that does not have a lot of commercial base and does not have a lot of growth, just simply because of the demographics of our town and the type of town that it is. So it was with the guidance of our financial team, Mr. Sullivan, who's with us from FinCom, Mr. Stanbrook, who is our town administrator, and Mr. Hassett, who is our town accountant. They crunched numbers and they presented to the board, and we made that decision on Friday as to the dollar amount. Now, this is not to suggest that this board wants an override or wants to pay more taxes or wants you to pay more taxes. This is to suggest that we feel that it is our responsibility as a board to balance the many competing needs that we have as a town and to do the best we can with the money and the revenue that we are given to do that job. And under the guidance of our financial team, it has become abundantly clear that we are about to enter a phase where we simply will not have sufficient funds to keep town operations and services going if the school budget is funded for the amount that has been requested. So we did take that vote. I do want to say that one of the things that I have found I would like to see more of, I don't want to say that it's lacking, but I'd like to see if we could work with the school committee to get this number that we've been assessed down a little bit further. And I'd like to discuss that. And, because we're talking about this override, I'd like to discuss it with the rest of the board. We know that there are accounts such as excess and deficiency that they can tap, that the school committee can tap, which reduces the assessment to the towns. And we know that there is money in the circuit breaker special education line item that they can tap that would also reduce the line item. And I think also an item that we certainly are taking under advisement and looking quite seriously at, and I would hope that the schools are as well, would be any salary increases and to whomever those might apply. And that is something that I would really like to see the school committee in earnest aggressively pursue before we end up having to go to the ballot and to town meeting. I'd really like to see them dig in a little bit further on that. For instance, there was roughly $1 million in the special education circuit breaker money, and the school committee voted to use $250,000 of that. That leaves a remainder of $750,000. And similarly in E&D, there was roughly $600,000. And I know that this is not an account that they want to bring all the way down to zero because it's something that they use for contingencies and emergencies, but they had only voted to use $350,000. And I'm really hoping that this is the first pass at the budget, and that in good earnest as a partner, we're going to see the school committee go back and again, sharpen their pencil and see if they can dig into that circuit breaker money a little bit more, and to the E&D money a little bit more, and into potentially upcoming increases, as we are doing and as I believe the town of Whitman is doing as well. So that is my soapbox. I will now step off of it, and I will go around and just see if anybody had anything else they wanted to add about the Prop 2.5 override. Mr. Dyer?
No, not at this time. Thank you.
Okay, Mr. Mitchell?
None at this time.
Okay, and Mr. Hickey?
I'm good, thank you.
Mr. Bloss?
Yeah, nothing at this time, thanks.
Okay, great. Mr. Stanbrook, did you want to talk to us about executing the June 27th town election warrant?
Yes, thank you. So the town clerk has prepared the warrant. Again, what I was saying earlier, the the usual language about the offices that are up for vote this year. I don't know if you want me to read it or not, but, and also with the question that we just spoke about, and I'm talking with the town clerk, she was saying that there's really no way to get around you, the selectmen having to come in and sign this. So I'm not sure how we can do this, maybe one at a time, or I don't know. But the official warrant has to be signed in ink.
Okay, so no virtual signatures are permitted?
You know, so I don't know, at least, not, again, they're coming out with guidance every day, but I have not seen
Sure.
anything about that at all. Everything that I've seen and what the town clerk has seen, it says that a wet signature is required on this. So I'm not sure how we could work that out, but that is required to be signed, so it can then be posted.
Okay, so I mean, we can certainly go around and discuss it, but I think obviously your safety and Greer's safety is important to us, as is the safety of all of the board members and everybody at town hall. So I don't know if you may want to maybe leave it in the selectmen's meeting room down on the first floor and give us a particular day, and we can sign up for times that we come in with our own pen and just execute it that way, or I don't know what other proposal you might have.
I think that would work very well. We can work out a day as probably tomorrow. Maybe I'm looking at Gray here. I'm sorry.
Wednesday or Thursday.
Wednesday or Thursday. I'm not sure if all the members can make it, but if they could, that's something we could do. Just leave it on the desk here. You bring your own pen, you sign it, and you head back out, I guess.
What date must this be executed physically by?
It's dated here on the 26th. And again, this assumes that you would be here tonight, obviously, in a regular meeting. I don't know the last day that it could possibly be signed, but I will go out on a limb and I'll say that I think we have a day or two.
Okay, and must it be signed by all board members?
It does not have to be signed by all board members, only by a majority of the board members.
Okay, because Mr. Hickey is not physically here, and so he would not be able to sign it. And so that, obviously he's engaged, he's on this all, he's still working on behalf of the town, but he just can't physically make it to town hall. All right, well, if that works for everybody, then what's the best way for us to tell, do you want us to just let Greer know when we can make it, and then if she sees some kind of a conflict, she can just kind of, police that, or?
Yes, we could work it out tomorrow with, if it's amenable to everyone, that we could work it out with Greer tomorrow and set up some times where everyone can come in and get it rolling. And Greer says that's okay.
Okay, all right. I'll just kind of. Oh, yes, yeah.
Just to note that Wes will not be available after 9 o'clock tomorrow morning.
Okay, Miss Getson, what time are you guys available? Could you possibly come in this evening, Mr. Bloss?
Yes.
Okay,
Or
is that an option?
I'm in bright and early tomorrow. I could do it. I could leave it earlier than 9.
Sure. All right. I don't have a key to town hall, so someone's going to let me in.
After 8 o'clock then.
That's not a problem. So I'll let you in. I'll let you in.
All right. Tell me a time.
Okay. Time after 8, I guess.
All right. I'll be there at 8.
Great. Thank you, Mr. Bloss. I'm glad you chimed in on that. Mr. Dyer, Mr. Mitchell, any thoughts, any comments?
If I went in after 5 tomorrow, is that a problem?
No, that's not a problem.
Okay.
Okay, that's what I'll do. I'll go after town hall is closed.
All right. Mr. Dyer?
I'll be more than happy to stop by during my lunch.
Fabulous. And Mr. Hickey, did you want to comment or say anything?
No, that's a great idea. Just everybody bring their own pen. No one's in the room. It gets signed, and as long as the majority signs it, then we're set.
we've got you back. And we, and I will probably pop on later in the afternoon after Mr. Dyer, but before Mr. Mitchell. Okay, great. So that brings us to review new timeline for town meeting and revised selectmen's calendar. Mr. Stanbrook.
Yes, thank you. So I have reworked the 2021 Selectmen's calendar based on the new date of July 20th for town meeting. I sent a list out of the calendar and the dates. If this is approved by the board, the next meeting would be June 9th, and then it would be June 23rd, and then June 30th for the next 3 meetings in June, and it would go on, but after that, and just the new deadlines based on the July 20th town meeting date are Tuesday, June 30th at 8 p.m. is the annual town meeting voter registration deadline. Monday, July 6th would be the deadline to post the special town meeting warrant. Friday, July 10th would be at 8 p.m. would be the special town meeting voter registration deadline. And Monday, July 13th would be the last date to post the annual town meeting warrant. Those are the new dates, and then the rest of the thing is just when Greer and I were thinking about taking some time off.
Okay, and I'm sorry, I meant to mention this when we were talking about the override. I think it's absolutely critical that we educate people, and I know you did that calculator, the online calculator, so people can see how it impacts, their own budget, what the impact will be on them individually. And I'm just hoping that we could perhaps get some type of a Zoom call, or I don't know what it looks like. I'm calling it a panel, but really I'm not expecting people to physically get together. But I was hoping that perhaps we could prevail upon Mr. Sullivan, you, Mr. Stanbrook, perhaps Todd Hassett, to explain, what does this mean? What are the repercussions? How will this impact other departments? And not in a way that's incendiary or trying to talk people into voting for the override or talk them out of voting for the override, but just to present the facts so that people can make a decision and they're armed with the facts. And so I'm hoping that we can get information out on the website, that we can maybe get information out on our Facebook page, again, maybe do a cable show with, some type of a panel. I really don't want people to feel as though in the middle of all of this shutdown, in the middle of having these meetings virtually, in the middle of all of this stuff and these many, many moving parts, that they're still not getting the information that they need. I don't want people to feel as though this is something that, is being done on a cloak of darkness and, something's being perpetuated that we're not letting people know about. I want to try to be as absolutely transparent as possible and make sure we're arming people with the information they need. And then they'll each make the decision that they feel is best for themselves in the town. So I'm hoping that that's something. I know it's a tall order and a very short amount of time, but I think it's rather critical that it be done. Anyway, I'm hoping that you can kind of get cracking on that. And if you don't mind, I'm just going to kind of go around and see if anybody else had thoughts on that. Mr. Dyer?
Not at this time, thank you.
Mr. Mitchell?
No questions.
Okay. Mr. Hickey?
Nope, I'm good.
Mr. Bloss?
Thank you. I'm good too.
Okay, great. So do you need us to vote on the revised new timeline for town meeting and revised selectmen's calendar, Mr. Stanbrook?
No, I don't think there's a formal vote needed. I just wanted to make sure that everyone was okay with it, and it made sense. And if any questions anyone had, I was here to answer it.
Okay. Did anybody have any questions about the calendar or any concerns about the dates or anything of that sort? Okay, I don't see anybody unmiking. Okay, great. So that moves us right along to discuss the proposed amendment to the WHRSD regional agreement. So I think while we were meeting or shortly before we met the last time, we all received a copy of the amendment, the proposed amendment to the 1991 regional agreement for the Whitman-Hanson Regional School District. And that amendment is something that it has been put on our warrant, and I believe has been put on Whitman's, or at least they're discussing it tonight, and I'm hoping that they will vote to be putting it on their warrant. Mr. Stanbrook, did you want to describe to us what that amendment does?
Yes, thank you. So I think you all have the proposed amendment, again, to the 1991 regional agreement, like the chair was just saying. The old way of calculating the costs are the first there on page 7, letter E, and that's what everyone calls the alternative method, I guess. And then the proposed amended language is the language that follows, where that would be a 50% total assessment under the statutory method. And again, that would be for fiscal year 21 only. And then thereafter, in fiscal year 22 and beyond, it would be the full statutory method. So that's pretty much it. There's other things in there, but that's the gist of what's going on there.
Okay, thank you. And Mr. Sullivan, I know that you have been on, and hopefully you're still sticking with us here. I'm just wondering, before I go around and have a discussion with the rest of the board, was there anything you wanted to share from a FinCom perspective?
With regard to the actual amendment itself,
Yes.
or just in general?
Well, feel free. Stick within our agenda, because I don't want to,
Yes. Yes.
not,
So,
violate.
My concern is with the changing in the timelines and all the COVID delays that, our standard, I had this discussion with the town administrator previously, our standard negotiating window, we would have started more back in February and worked all the way up and had our meeting and had our number set. And I think this is the first time I've ever experienced this. I'm fearful that this is the best deal we're going to get.
Mm-hmm.
And, I hope that at a very minimum, the citizens of Hanson realize this, that, regardless of how we got here or, the tempers that are flaring on both sides, there's a very real possibility that this is the best deal we're going to get. And if we don't work to, I'm planning on, as you mentioned earlier, I'm planning on setting up a couple sessions, maybe to try and advocate for this, not from the standpoint of the school, but from the standpoint of the overall well-being of the town.
Mm-hmm.
The way I'm looking at it now is this is the best deal we're going to get. And the worst case scenario is pretty dire. It doesn't look good at all. And, I think people need to just take that into consideration. I've never been a fan of an override, but in this case, I think this is a unique one-off circumstance. And with regard to the agreement, I think it's what we need to get us over the hill here.
Okay. All right. Thanks. Appreciate your perspective. Mr. Dyer.
Oh, thank you. My personal belief is that I'm okay with next year doing a 50-50 split, but I want to see the conversation go beyond that. I don't think it's right to say do 50-50 this year and then next year go full statutory and hold the kids hostage. I think that we need to provide them with the best education that we can. And, if we can just do it for this fiscal year, do a 50-50 split, and then give us another year without COVID or, life in the new normal, where we can have a better discussion, possibly in person, on what the future would look like for Whitman-Hanson, that'd be great. I think that's the best way forward. I share the same sentiments as Mr. Sullivan, where is this the best deal that we'll get? I don't know, but I think if we can go back to Whitman, just say, listen, let's do this for the kids, do a 50-50 split for this year, let's continue these conversations and hopefully find something, a better deal for the next fiscal year. That'd be great.
Okay, but correct me if I'm wrong, Mr. Steinbrook. I believe the amendment itself precludes the further conversation after this year.
Yes, that's correct. So on the second page, it says apportionment of operating costs for fiscal year 2022 and thereafter will follow the statutory methodology as defined in the Commonwealth's regulations.
And I understand, Mr. Dyer, what you're saying, because I know early on, you know, we had said, look, this is nothing that Hanson has done to anybody. We have not intentionally, you know, not applied statutory. We were merely going by our agreement methodology, and so was Whitman. And now that everybody's been made aware that this other path can be followed, and that it seems clear that the state wants everybody to follow it in the regional district, and the votes are, you know, what they are on the school committee, being 6-4 with Whitman having 6 votes. That, you know, we can see that it would be quite an uphill battle for Hanson to continue to be able to pay per pupil. And early on, Mr. Dyer, we had had that conversation and had said, you know, maybe we could have a phase in, et cetera, et cetera. The very strong message that has come back is that many in Whitman are not even supportive of any transition whatsoever and want to move right to statutory. But those that are trying to partner with us and understand the difficulty, even those folks are, I think in the majority, are saying it needs to be the 1-year agreement and then statutory. I have not heard anybody, at least publicly, endorse a multi-year phase-in, which I think is, of course, what we would all like. So I think I mentioned that because this amendment is structured such that it is a 1-year compromise and then it moves to statutory. So, Mr. Mitchell.
Yeah, I think initially, the way that Matt just explained it, that's the way that I would have loved to have seen it too, you know, where we progress into this thing over a 3-year period. But I think at this point, that ship has already sailed. I think we need the override. If the override doesn't go through, then we could possibly be faced with cuts, you know, in public safety. So I think at this point, we've got to do the best job we can to educate the citizens on how important this override is. And I agree with Mr. Sullivan. This is, honestly, I'm surprised that we even come to this deal, but I think this is the best deal that we could possibly get at this point in the game.
Okay. And Mr. Hickey.
I would have to agree with Kenny, Matt, and Kevin, but my question, and please forgive me, I do not have my Selectmen tablet in front of me. I read the amendment. How does the makeup of the school committee change with this situation? Is it still 6-4?
Yeah, that was not changed. So there's 2 different things about the regional agreement that are at play. One is that regional agreement committee, which is sort of like the overhaul of the regional agreement going forward, and what will it look if this partnership is going to stay intact. So there's that piece. But then this piece is totally something that we had not really discussed as a group at all. This is amending that 1991 agreement. So to answer your question, in this agreement, in this amendment rather, there is nothing that's addressing any of the other things that we had talked about, like mediation for pulling out, or like any of the other things that everybody on the regional agreement committee had given for feedback that they wanted to have in the future agreement. This purely talks about keeping the rest of that agreement intact, and just amending the piece that talks about how the assessment is done. So it doesn't change that 6-4 composition.
Okay, then, I mean, I agree with the override to get it on and let the people make their choice, but I can't agree with this, that we're going to pay 50%, and then according to John on page 2, we're going to full statutory next year. So, and it's still 6-4 Whitman? I don't agree.
Okay. So just to be clear, that means that we will, it means that the assessment method, that statutory will apply if this amendment doesn't get adopted right out of the gate. And whether we want it to or not, if we go to 1/12, it will be statutory on the 2020. And if the school committee moves forward, it will be statutory on the 2021 budget. So this amendment is probably the best we're going to get. I'm not saying I'm 100% thrilled with it. I'm not, but it's probably the best we're going to get. And but you know that I definitely appreciate everybody's perspective on this. Mr. Bloss?
Are we voting on? Are we voting as the Board of Selectmen to accept the amendment?
Mr. Stanbrook, we're just discussing. We didn't have vote, but are we required to vote for this tonight?
I don't believe so. I don't think it is, at some point before town meeting, obviously, yes, but not tonight. It was just to discuss the latest developments.
Yep.
Well, I'm not clear on that. At town meeting will vote on this. The Board of Selectmen will recommend, as we do all articles, yes, no, it will be a unanimous, it will be a split vote. I mean, I'm absolutely with Jim. I think in one sense, we all are. I mean, Kevin Sullivan has convinced me. I really understand that in the end, whatever fight we put up, the state will eventually step in, whether it's this year, halfway through next year, and we will pay. Retroactively, we will pay the statutory. So I don't see, I mean, you had hope once there was a way forward, but Whitman certainly has strong-armed us to a point where the state is going to say statutory, but that doesn't mean that the 5 of us, I'm assuming, have to say, we agree with this. I mean, we could unanimously say, no, not one of the selectmen thinks that this is the way to go. But and it's town meeting that decides. Am I wrong on that?
Well, I think I don't think you're wrong about that. I think typically, probably with both the Proposition 2.5 and with the amendment, ultimately, I think what we're saying is like, look, these are the cards we've been handed. We're not saying this is a fantastic situation, but we're going to defer to town meeting and to the voters because this is a democratic process and that's what it's all about, to ultimately decide whether we don't need to endorse it or say we don't endorse it. We're simply presenting these options as they've been presented to us.
I mean, I'm going to say, I'm going to put it on the line. Of course, I'm going to vote for the override because I see there is no possible way for the town of Hanson to move on. I'm just infuriated, as are most of us, that we've been put in this position. I mean, I'm just going to laugh as the oldest person here. I grew up in this poor town of the two. It was always, Whitman had always the money, Hanson didn't. I'm not clear exactly when that changed. They make it sound like in 1990, somehow Hanson had become rich. And I don't believe that. And when I look at our commercial base, we have almost no commercial base compared to Whitman. And that's not figured into the algorithm. So it's like, this is totally unfair. But I'm not sure, I'm positive, there's no way we're going to get the state to change this ruling anytime soon. I mean, that will be a long, drawn-out process if we get it started. So it's like, for now, I mean, there is no question. As a former teacher, I will vote for the override because I don't want the kids held hostage. And I absolutely, the thought that many of my students have just been hired in Hanson on the fire department, on the police department. I mean, kids that we educated are now just beginning to start their careers in Hanson, for Hanson. And who's going to lose their jobs? Yep, so that's where I stand. So I'm completely against this. I'm just with Kevin. I understand why we're here. I know exactly where to put the blame. But, so I don't want to go into town meeting making it sound like we, the Board of Selectmen, support this. We are only doing this because we've been basically blackmailed into doing this, and we have no choice.
Okay. Oh, wow. Okay. All right. I mean, I understand what you're saying. Okay. So if we don't need to vote, I think we now know that it's going to be presented to the voters, and ultimately they'll make the decision, and then we will do what we need to do based on that decision. Mr. Stanbrook, anything else you wanted to add on that?
I'd just like to say that the Board of Selectmen decide what articles go on the town meeting warrant. So I guess, you know, at some point when we go through all the articles, you will have to, you know, vote in order to put this article on. It doesn't just automatically get on there. The selectmen will have to vote to put it on. But other than that, I guess that's it.
Yeah.
Yes, that's understood.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yep.
Yep.
Okay. All right, great. I don't think we've got any requests or appointments or resignations that I'm aware of. We have nothing listed under old business, which brings us, and don't feel under the gun, Mr. Stanbrook, but it's between you and 8 o'clock, town administrators report. Yeah, if you can just update us on what's been going on, that would be great.
Sure, thank you very much. So I've been updating you on warrants that I've signed since the last meeting. You gave me authority through June 30th to sign all the warrants on behalf of the Board of Selectmen during this COVID-19 pandemic. So I have signed the following warrants on behalf of the Board of Selectmen since the last meeting. A warrant dated May 21st of 2020, warrant 47 for $308,631.71. That was a vendor warrant, and the major expenditure on that warrant was a $251,240.25 assessment, the fourth quarter assessment for South Shore Vocational School. So that was on there. That was most of that warrant. I also signed a warrant 47 PR dated May 21st, 2020 for $137,241.22. And again, that's a payroll warrant. And then I signed a warrant dated May 21st, 2020, warrant 47WH for $25,613.57. And again, that is a payroll withholding warrant. So just a new business. Today was the first day that people were starting to come back into town hall. Again, this is the phase 1 approach that we talked about. I think that was last meeting? I think it was last meeting. Trying to work out the kinks of the plan to, you know, have everyone come in, who can come back to work, who can't, try to, you know, see the social distancing and the guidelines, trying to keep the guidelines in place, and where we're going to need things that we didn't think of, at least I didn't think of until actually people came in and started to interact of what we need. We're having a little bit of a difficulty getting plexiglass. That seems to be in high demand, as you can well imagine. But we're working on that for town hall, and today was the first day, and it went rather smoothly with not very many hiccups. So good to see a lot of the town hall people come in during the day. Good to see them because we haven't seen some of them in a while. The town administrator, the Hanson Town Administrator Special Act requires me to give the board an update on all outstanding legal matters, and that's on a monthly basis, and I will send those out to you, but again, that won't be a public document because it may contain personnel, union bargaining, or health-related issues. Can't be discussed in public session, but it's just my notice that I have complied with the requirements under the Act for this month of May. With our town meeting now moved to July 20th, we're going to have to come up with a 1/12 plus budget for a town budget to submit to the Director of Accounts for approval prior to June 30th. For July of fiscal year 21, we have to come up with a monthly budget as for every month that we don't have a town meeting that sets a budget. So I'll be working with Town Accountant Todd Hassett, Treasurer Collector Gene Sullivan, and we'll try to determine what spending and debt requirements we need for July, and we need to get that into the Director of Accounts, as Mary Jane Handy, as fast as possible, so to get her approval, so that we'll have a 1/12 budget ready to go for fiscal year 21. Also last Thursday, I think it was, there was some more guidance given from Plymouth County regarding the CARES Act money that the town could possibly receive for COVID-19 related expenses. Again, if the people want to see what's going on with that, the public, they can go to www.plymouthcountycares.com. That's the web portal that the county has set up to take care of the money. Again, it was approximately $90.9 million allocated to Plymouth County. And the call last week was how to set up how to submit reimbursement claims. They're going live with reimbursement claims. I think it's this week. So we need to start scanning those in. We have been keeping track of them. I've been keeping track of them. I know that the Fire Chief Thompson has been keeping track of some of them. You know, throughout the town, we've been keeping track of everything. So I think we're going to start submitting these things and trying to get some reimbursement going. Just real quickly on the Plymouth County money, again, that was for expenses incurred. We have to have actually spent the money in order to get reimbursed for it, and it is not for revenue replacement. Again, last week I used the example of if we had 5 weddings cancel at the camp for $5,000 each, we can't put in for $25,000 of reimbursement. That was revenue that didn't come in. That's not an expense. So these are all expense related. We have to have actually spent the money to get reimbursed. Again, these are costs between March 1st, 2020 and December 31st, 2020 that are related to COVID-19. And 25% of the money has been set aside by the county. So Hanson's amount of potential reimbursement is around $476,000, a little bit more than that. We had a meeting, a call today with superintendent at Women Hanson and the finance director. I think, I'm not sure what John Tuffy's title is, but whatever his title is, and the town administrator in Whitman and myself, and we discussed what the regional school district costs might be. They're still compiling those costs. Again, the county is going to send money for reimbursement to towns only, but we can pass it on to like a regional school district. So I asked Mr. Tuffy and the superintendent in order to get rolling, and they agreed that they're going to get their costs that they have related to COVID-19 to both us and the Whitman Town Administrator, Mr. Lynham. So we have to make sure that we coordinate funding. The schools have some FEMA related reimbursements that they could go for. Again, we can't have a double count on this type of thing. You can only get reimbursed for one thing. So we want to make sure that we're not, asking for the one cost to be reimbursed twice by the feds. Of course, that'll be disallowed, and we'll have to give money back, and we don't want to have to do that. And I want to thank everybody that's making town government still function as much as possible. We're getting little by little, we're getting there. And I'm really proud of everyone that I've been working with. Greer's been doing a great job. Everyone at the fire, police, highway, the town hall. Now the people are starting to come back in. Water, Council on Aging that we heard earlier, library. They're doing a fantastic job. Recreation, the transfer station, everybody. Keep up the great work, and we're getting there. So thank you very much.
Well, thank you, John, and thank you, Greer. You guys have been doing a fantastic job against some pretty difficult odds. With that, I will entertain a motion to adjourn. I'm sorry, Mr. Dyer, did you have something?
Nope, I just was gonna move to adjourn.
Okay, great.
Second, Kenny.
Okay, roll call vote, Mr. Dyer,
Aye, and thank you to all our employees.
Mr. Mitchell,
Aye.
Mr. Hickey,
Aye.
Mr. Bloss,
Aye.
and Ms. Kemet, aye. Everybody stay safe. Take care.